you have to realize that these people, they themselves are on their own journey. Even if somebody creates a certain view of themselves to be perfect and very polished, that person is still finding themselves. And we can't keep putting other human beings on a pedestal. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gloal podcast. I'm your host, Tadiwa, and today we're going to be talking about how social media has really pushed us to sort of act in extremes, to think in extremes, and to always sort of take things to the very far end. And I feel like there's a lesson to be learned there when it comes to the areas of glow up and self care, because we've kind of lost the critical thinking of realizing that we have to have a balance and we have to take what works for us and not be obsessed or to always follow every single trend that comes along. This is something I've massively noticed on social media recently, especially with like TikTok trends, with the obsession of certain aesthetics, with the obsession of certain wellness trends. Um, they come and go. They come and go. People love them one day and then people hate them the next day. And I think the point that I really want to get across in this podcast is that trends are great, they can be fun, they can be a nice way to spice things up, but you cannot get lost in the sauce. You can't get lost in the sauce. You can't let social media guide your entire life, especially when it comes to your self care, your mental health, your glow up. Like, you can't abandon those areas, but you also can't obsess over those areas based off of what you see on social media. Um, and I think that it's very worrying, especially with Gen Z, which I'm pretty sure I'm Gen Z. Especially with Gen Z, the people in my age group, which is like I guess the 18 to 25 age range, we love social media. We love TikTok, we love Instagram, we love the trends that come with those social media apps. But I feel like what I see happening is that our generation is quite obsessed with forming their identity. And I think a problem comes where people are obsessing over using social media to build their identity. And I think this is very important because this age range, this group that I'm in, we are at a critical stage in our development. Not to get all psychological, but I'm doing a psychology degree, so it's understandable. But we're in a stage where we're still developing our personalities, we're still finding ourselves and finding what we like and what we don't like, how that relates to the world around us, how it relates to our peers, our family members, our career goals, things like that. And when you grow up in a part of society, in a time in society, sorry, where social media is very prevalent and the third space has become social media, it's very easy to take the things that you see a little too seriously. And I really want to teach you guys that I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to criticize anybody. But it's actually because I've fallen into that many times that I want to be able to give you guys the advice of how I've come out of that and how, as much as I'm still finding myself and I'm still trying to understand myself and explore my personality, what I like, what I don't like, I've had to really do some critical thinking when it comes to my use of social media and how I interpret trends and how I interpret the information that I take from social media. Um, and it's definitely a skill that has to be built on. It's definitely not something that you kind of become amazingly able to do overnight, especially if you are somebody who you feel a bit lost within yourself. And social media is like your safe place where you get to like find that trend that works for you and that aesthetic that you like for you. But today, I just really want to be able to guide you guys in a way where I show you like how to take what you see but not let it consume you, not let it be all that is about you. Because when those trends die, when it turns out that certain wellness thing that was working actually has awful consequences, um, it's really hard. It's very, very hard. It's very painful. And you go back to feeling lost again. So, one thing that I would definitely want to say is that your identity is a very big and crucial thing. And it's something that I know it's super cliche, but like you are on a journey in this life. There isn't this like there isn't this perfect version of you that you need to build yourself up to be, and that's it. Like when you get to be her or him, that's you done. That doesn't exist. What does exist is I'm sure there's a higher version of you, or there's a version of you that is more emotionally mature. There's a version of you that takes better care of herself. There's a version of you that's more healed, etc. But even that version is not an end goal. Like you don't you don't stop at her or him. There's so much more to you. No matter how much you glow up and no matter how much self-care you get to, there's always going to be something to learn and there's always going to be something to grow. But I very much see that identity and your personality and all this and that it's a very big part of you. But if you are, especially if you're under 30, I need you to realize, I'm not saying at 30, by the way, you're going to have like your personality and your identity figured out. But especially when you're under 30, your personality and your identity and really finding yourself is just not cemented. Even I'm going to say when you're under 40, because you will get to your 30s and realize you still are figuring life out. And I really want to mention that because I think we've been kind of fed this idea that there's this end goal, there's this person that you need to become. And I think a huge part of that is a huge problem with that is the fact that this idea of who we think we need to end up being is based on other people on social media. It's based on influencers, it's based on celebrities, it's based on people that we look up to. And we think when I get my life together, when I have everything in check, that I'm going to be like that person and I'm going to think like that person. I'm going to have the money like this person. And that's a huge part of where that problem is coming from. Um, it's not seeing that, okay, this person does this in their like glow up routine or their self care routine. I think this can work for me. I don't know if this will work for me, but I'm going to try to see if it works for me. I'll try it out, but it's not who I need to be. You have to realize that these people, they themselves are on their own journey. Even if somebody creates a certain view of themselves to be perfect and very polished, that person is still finding themselves. And we can't keep putting other human beings on a pedestal and expecting them to be amazing and perfect, and then be disappointed when they make a mistake, be disappointed when we see them looking just like us. um Seeing someone who is normally like snatched every day look average or look just generally how most people look, and then be surprised. First of all, when you're on this journey, there are times where you're going to achieve a certain, let's say, glow up goal, or you're in a certain stage of your healing and you make progress. Whether that's you get stronger in the gym, or it's that you become more emotionally stable, whatever it is. But then you slip up. You have a week where you're in a depressive state, or you have a year where you've gained 20 pounds and your eating habits aren't as great as they are. What happens in that year does not change the fact that you've still made progress, and the fact that you're going to get yourself back up. You might go back to a certain weight, but you've been working on yourself emotionally. You might lose some of the money you made, but you're spending more time with the people that you love. And I say that because I think when it comes to glow up and self care and healing, we think that we need to have things really, really in check. Like we need to have it all together. And when you have that sort of mindset, you will get disappointed because you'll realize that sometimes you have some, not all. Sometimes you are 90% where you would like to be. Sometimes you have 10% of where you would like to be. But that doesn't change the fact that you are a human being having this lived experience, learning so much, doing so much, and that's not who you're not your glow up for one. You're not a bunch of glow up tips. You're not a bunch of self-care tips. You're a human being put on this planet for who knows what reason. I can't tell you what that reason is. I'm still figuring it out myself. And when you realize that you have to stop treating yourself like a project, because I think that social media has pushed us into behaving like we're just a bunch of projects. We're a bunch of areas in life that needs to be worked on. You will lose yourself. I love glow up content. I love self-care content. I love healing content. Like it makes me feel warm inside. It makes me feel good. But I had to realize that I am more than those things. And putting the advice and the videos and the books on a pedestal will make me lose who I am as a person. My identity is not rooted in my glow up. It is rooted in the person that I am. Um, and I think that is why I really want to emphasize on this podcast that the internal glow up above everything is the most important thing, because all the physical things, they can go at any moment. And if those things were to go, you need to be able to look into yourself and feel like you love the person that you are inside, or at least you love who you're working on yourself to be. um and I think I should definitely go into more detail in another podcast about that. But back to the topic of extreme, taking things into extremes. I see people see a certain trend and then they're like, oh, well, this trend is out. Or people become so engulfed and so obsessed with a certain trend. And then as soon as it's not trending, anybody who's still following that trend is basically not part of the cool kids. They're basically like, they need to get on the bandwagon, whatever it's called. Like, you need to get it together. And I think this is crazy. Like, I saw this with the clean girl aesthetic, and then it was like strawberry girl aesthetic, like so many aesthetics. It felt like every day there was a new aesthetic. And I was seeing people being super shady on social media, whether someone's like, here's my clean girl aesthetic makeup, and then people are like this is boring, this is basic, like nobody does that anymore. Or people being upset or offended by certain trends, being like, wow, I still do, like for example, people doing like the 2016 makeup versus like 2023 makeup, and people getting absolutely furious with that. And unless somebody is genuinely just being rude and saying like, you need to do your makeup the way that I do it and you need to be the way that I am, which would be dumb, there is no need for anybody to be enraged by the fact that somebody is following a trend, or by the fact that somebody is not following a trend and doing something different. There is also no need to be enraged when people have an aesthetic and do not have an aesthetic. Because if that's working for them, cool. But as far as it goes for yourself as a person, there is no need for you to be on either extremes. There's no need for you to be obsessed with one trend, and that's all you care about. And then when you see somebody do something in a different trend, you're like flabbergasted. Like, how? Why? Like, when you're rooted within yourself and your identity, and who you want to be and what you like, what you don't like, and you know that that could change tomorrow. Your makeup could change tomorrow. You could have the same makeup aesthetic since you ever started makeup until the day you die. No matter what it is that you like, when you know I'm doing this because I like it, and if there's a trend that comes, I can try it, I cannot try it, whatever. When you basically have your own level of self-worth and self-identity, and you're rooted basically, you won't be affected by what other people are doing. You won't be in extremes where you think, well, there's this trend, so I need to be like that, because you realize trends come and go. If I want to try it, I can try it. If I don't, I don't. But the thing is, with social media, people are falling into these deep extremes where you have to be one thing or the other. It's either you're part of the cool kids or you're not. Me saying cool kids, just it sounds so millennial. Um, but even with that, like everything has become, everything has to be categorized. And I love categories. I do. I love a bit of organization and structure, but I don't think that people's identities are something we need to be labeling constantly and something that we always need to categorize. We have to just be. We simply have to be. Not be the dark feminine aesthetic, not be the strawberry aesthetic, just be. Because when you always have to be in a category, you'll find yourself feeling like you can't slip out of that category. You find yourself feeling like you'll find yourself denying things that you would normally like or enjoy simply because it doesn't fit an aesthetic. And that is an extreme way of thinking, but I see how common that has become on social media, and it's almost become very clicky. um if somebody doesn't know a certain trend, the girls that get it, the girls that don't, like that kind of mentality. Like, by the way, I love that quote, it makes me laugh. But it's kind of giving that kind of vibe where it's like, if you don't know what's happening, if you don't know the latest trend, like who even are you? But that is a very insecure way of thinking. Some people just don't want to be in an aesthetic. Some people just don't want to follow a certain trend. And you have to ask yourself, if you're finding yourself falling into like always wanting to follow a trend, like why? Why can't I see myself as a human being that has varied interests that can change? Why do I have to be on job searching for what the latest trend is? Why does that matter? How does that affect my self-esteem? How does that affect how I fit into this world? Because so for me, my identity has always been a funny thing, because I am a very I don't know how to put this. I'm a varied person, I guess you could say. I have many, many, many interests. Um, a huge part of that is because I'm neurodivergent, but I have many interests. I've had so many hobbies, more than I can count. I have lots of different types of music I like to listen to. I have lots of different fashion styles that I like. And I remember when aesthetics were becoming more and more popular, I started feeling a little bit like, oh my gosh, like, is do I need to stick to something? Because especially when I would listen to some of the people on social media, whether it's like fashion, makeup, they would pretty much be like, you need a staple style. You need something that's basically like your brand identity. That's the one. You need something that is part of your brand and you need to stick to it. And I was having a very hard time with that. I just couldn't. I tried. I remember going through my clothes and being like, is this part of the aesthetic? Like, I made a Pinterest board and I found like an aesthetic that I wanted. But then I found myself like seeing things that I liked on Pinterest and I would add more things to the board. And I'd be like, oh, okay, now I'm mixing aesthetics. And then I just had to get to a point where I was like, what's wrong with that? Anyway, back to the topic. I found myself having to tailor my life to this Pinterest board of mine that I made and trying to curate my life according to this Pinterest board. And this was a huge problem, especially when it came to my room decor. Because at some point, I remember minimalism was so in, and I'm a girl with many interests. I have a certain vibe when it comes to my decor. I like a lot of like cream and brown, but I also love like green, pops of color, a bit of pink, um, like baby pink, like I like a lot of different things. You'd have to like really see my space to to get what I mean. But I found myself really liking a lot of different aesthetics. But then when I saw that like the minimalist black and white type of aesthetic, lots of grays, I felt the pressure to go and do that because I think another huge problem is a lot of these aesthetics, they come with um a sense of status, they come with a sense of socioeconomic background. And I think for a lot of like ethnic minorities, and I can only really speak on that because I'm an ethnic minority, I'm a black woman living in the UK. For a lot of us, um, our parents, the sort of homes that we're in, it was a lot of like um it was quite different to what we were seeing on social media. So you're seeing on social media like very basic minimalist furniture, and then in your parents' house it's full of like pictures of you and your family on the wall. It's full of pattern sofas. By the way, I'm speaking for myself and my friends. I'm not saying this is everybody. The carpet is like, I don't know, like a red and like brown, like it's lots of color is one thing that I've seen in my parents' home and a lot of my friends who are also ethnic minorities in their homes. And then social media isn't looking like that. So then when you grow up and you maybe have the money for your own place or you're decorating your own room in a certain way, there's such a pressure to now adapt your environment to fit what you're seeing on social media. And I'm so glad that that is kind of dying out now. But at the time, especially like, I don't know, 2019, 2020, that kind of time, I just remember being like almost like a distaste. I don't know how to describe it, but the aesthetic of my childhood home, the the clutter, which can be understandable because there's kids and they have toys. Like I grew to hate that because of social media. It didn't bother me until I compared myself to social media because I was like, this looks so clean. Like, don't get it twisted. I'm all for declutter your home. Don't have unnecessary things. And I think for some ethnic minority parents, there can be a lot of clutter in the home because perhaps at least from my experiences, whether your parents grew up in an environment where they didn't have as much, so now that they do, they hold on to everything, things like that. And that's the complete opposite of minimalism. The problem is we we've now grown up into a culture where there is a certain aesthetic, there is a certain culture. I don't know how to describe it, but there's a certain vibe when it comes to the content you see on social media. And when your life doesn't fit that, it's very easy to think that you need to change everything to fit that. Because most of the time what we're seeing on social media, these people have a privileged background, whether that's from their own hard work, from their parents, from whatever. But we see that these are people that have a certain status. They have things that we have been taught by society to want and need. So then we try to get a slice of that by changing ourselves and by changing our environment based on trends. And that can be so damaging to your bank account, for one, and it can be so damaging to your self esteem because you now end up putting social media and what we see on a pedestal and treating that as if it is the gold standard of being, of living, of looking like. And trust me, as someone who's been at that point where I used to like try to create myself and my environment around that, it's not worth it. You end up, even if you get all those things, you end up realizing like, who, what do I like? Who am I? What do I want for myself? And I hate that social media has gotten us to a point where we feel like we have to be in a particular box. And if we're not in that box, we end up wanting to just change everything. And it's very much throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You can find things in these trends that you like, whether it's decluttering and having less of things that you don't need, or a certain color palette that you like, or a certain piece of furniture, or a certain hairstyle, a certain pair of shoes, a certain coat that you like. But for you to try and emulate every single thing that you see on social media will hurt you, and it will leave you feeling lost and like you don't have a sense of self. Um, you are a very complex being. There is so much to you. There's so much to your personality. There's so much to your likes and wants and needs, etc. And social media will not teach you all of that. Copying someone's aesthetic will make you end up at 50 realizing I never really did what I liked. I never really wore what I wanted. I never really explored my own aesthetic. Have your own aesthetic. Not an aesthetic based on something, but have your own aesthetic where it's just a beautiful combination of everything that you like and everything that you want. And don't break your bank account in the process. Don't go broke in the process. But my point is, don't obsess over what other people are doing, and don't fall into these extremes where you have to be doing a certain trend. You have to be in that category or you're losing in life, because that's just not the case. Um, See what works for you, whether it's the tips that I give you regarding self-care, healing, mental health, glow up. And if it doesn't work for you, let it go. I remember trying so hard to be a wake up at 5 a.m. girly and going to bed basically at the time that I would normally be starting another show to watch. And even though I was getting more done, I was exhausted because, for one, my body needs a lot of sleep, a lot. And I need good quality sleep. And when I was forcing myself to go to bed at like 9 a.m., I was going to bed anxious and stressed because I was like, oh my gosh, looking at the time every few seconds, all because I binge watched these morning routines of people waking up at the crack of dawn, getting their life together. And I had to realize that while that works for other people, that does not work for me. And I'm killing myself trying to be the way that other people are. And it wasn't working. It was hurting me. It was making me feel sick. It was making me feel anxious. And then I ended up thinking to myself, like, okay, I know that I like working, like doing a lot of my work in the morning. That's when I can have the most energy. But doing 5 a.m. isn't gonna work for me. What works? So I trialed different morning routines. I tried going to bed at different times until I found what works for me. And then guess what? Even when I finally realized that, okay, waking up at 7 works 10 times better for me than 5 a.m., I realized that I cannot wake up at 7 a.m. every day. Things happen. I remember finding myself turning down certain things. So I was like, I need to be disciplined. I need to do this. And I wouldn't even have anything the next day. I didn't even have uni the next day. I was just obsessed with this idea of going to bed at the same time every day. And don't get me twisted, like that's good and that's very healthy for you. But if you have one day where you go to bed 45 minutes earlier or later, sorry, that's not the end of the world. That doesn't mean you failed, because my problem was I was being told by these people, you need to be disciplined, and you need to do this, and if you don't do it, you don't care. You don't care about yourself. You don't care about your life because you're not invested enough. And then I thought to myself, like, but I am. I know that I'm very invested into my future. I'm very invested into what I want to do in my life. But I'm just not going to wake up at 5 a.m. I'm not going to follow the routine of a complete stranger that has a completely different life to me. On the days where I have work, I cannot follow the exact same routine. And as much as I'm still working on trying to have more consistency and more stability in my routine, I've had to get to a point where I have more compassion and more self love for myself, so that if I fall off the routine, if I don't do as I normally do, that's fine. That doesn't mean I failed. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. It just means that's life. You're seeing people on social media show you one day of their life, whether it's of their routine, their morning routine, whatever, and you think it's like that every day, but it's not for the majority of these people. For some of them, they somehow manage to do the same 10-step skincare routine every day, but for the majority, they don't. So you have to stop comparing your your life and what you're doing to complete strangers in your life, and you have to stop falling into these extremes, because you will extremely hurt yourself. You extremely end up feeling like you're a failure and like you're not doing enough. You can only do your best, and that's not going to look the same every day. Social media will have you thinking that every every meal needs to like be perfect and curated in a particular way. And then whenever you don't do that, you don't want to you don't even want to make something. You don't want to eat something because it's not what you've seen on social media. Like, especially when you're somebody who's an ethnic minority, you've lived in a household where the food is maybe different, and you don't want to eat your mom's food, even if it's healthy, even if it's literally she's cooked it to perfection, it's good for you, it's nutritious, but because it doesn't look like something you saw on social media, you feel ashamed. Like I said, you are your own person. You are this person on this earth having a unique life experience that is not the same to anybody else's. No matter how many times you see a video that makes you feel like you've never had a single unique experience, you're a unique human being, and your life is not supposed to look like everybody else's. You cannot fall into the trap of thinking that you need to be like that person, because then you're just another clone. You're cloning your personality, you're cloning your likes and dislikes to be like other people, and you just don't need to do that. But yeah, the point that I really want to get across is, please don't let social media fool you into thinking that there is something wrong with you. Don't let social media fool you into thinking that you need to fall into an extreme or into a particular category or into a certain aesthetic. You have to go and find yourself. And that takes time. It takes a very long time. And even when you find yourself, you come to realize that there's still more to find out about yourself, and there's still more to explore. The world is such a very big place, and there is so much to do and to see, and so many people to meet, and all of those things will bring you new learned experiences about yourself. You want to be somebody who's adaptable. You want, I don't know if that's the right word. You want to be someone who can adapt to new environments, to new spaces, and hanging on to social media curated themes and stereotypes and aesthetics and trends does hinder you from that. It hinders you from finding who you really are, what you really want, and what you really like. Um, and I hope you find that. I hope that you don't ever feel like you need to be a particular way for your life experiences to be meaningful. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. If you're watching on the video version, I'm so sorry for this very funky lighting and me just like awkwardly holding the microphone because it's just been that kind of day. But I really wanted to record this and just get out to you guys. Thank you so much for listening and watching as well. I hope to see you guys in the next one and hear from you what you thought, what you liked, and let's just keep the conversation going. So, yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. Mwah.